another sample project using a loop. So here I've created a project and I call it high-low game, and my interface is just simply a single button which I named BTN Play. Change the form's text to reflect high-low guessing game on the caption. Let's take a look at my code in which I use a loop. So here's the code for that BTN Play button. We're handling the click event. I have 3 integers named the number. That's going to represent the number that the computer is going to randomly pick. The user's guess, and I want to keep track of the number of guesses that they take to find the number. We're going to use a random object, and I called it myRandom. And then the number equals myRandom.next, and in parentheses 100, that's going to take a value between 0 and 99, and I'm going to add 1, so I get a value randomly between 1 and 100. I'm going to set the number of guesses equal to 1. Then I use a do loop, and in the do loop, I'm going to ask them to enter a number between 1 and 100, and I'm going to use that input box from Visual Basic that we saw a few videos back. And then I'm going to take that number, I'm going to convert it to an integer using int.parse and place it in guess. And if guess is less than the number, I'm going to show a message box that says your guess was too low. Else if it's higher than the number, I'll say your guess was too high. And I've got a too low here in my message box, and that should be too high. Else, it's not too low, it's not too high, meaning they hit it. Message box will say you guessed it in, and I'm going to keep track of the number of guesses, so I'm going to say the number of guesses, convert it to a string, and the word guesses. And each time through that loop, I'm going to add 1 to guesses. I'm going to do that while guess is not equal to the number. So there's my do while. It's going to happen at least once. So maybe they guess on the very first time, it'll still happen once, and the number of guesses is going to be 1, because I showed that before I increment the number of guesses, and then this would be a false statement and the loop would end. So I suggest that you go back and create this project, add a button to your interface, name it BTN Play, set the text equal to Let's Play, and then come in and type in this code, and it'll help you get a feel for doing a do while loop. And here we have a nested if else loop inside that do while. Well, let me test it and we'll watch this run. So here's my project. I'm going to click the Let's Play, and I'm asked to enter a number between 1 and 100. Let's do 55. And I'm told that's too low. So I know it's between 56 and 100. Click OK. This time let's enter 70. And that's still too low. Let's try 85. 85 is too high. So now it's between 71 and 84. I'm going to kind of split that difference. Let's go about 77. Still too high. 75 is too high. And 74 is the number. It took me 6 guesses to get that. Let me just play it one more time. That one's too high this time for 45. Let's try 25. Too low. 30. Still too low. 37 is too high. 34 is still too high. 32, too low. And 33 was the number, and it took me 7 guesses. So it loops until you hit the right number, and then it exits and tells you that you guessed it in how many guesses it took. So let me show you one more thing in testing my program. I want to see what happens if I guess the number the very first time. I want to make sure it comes up and says, you guessed it in one guess, or guesses. Not good grammar, but it still works. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this number of guesses, place my cursor there. I'm just going to right click and choose Breakpoint, Insert Breakpoint. Now the breakpoint means it's going to pause there. And I can then check to see what the values are of these different variables. Let me go ahead and run it. So here's my program. I'm going to click Let's Play. And notice it stops here, highlights that line, but it shows me down here all the different values. And I see the number is 61. Guess is currently 0. Number of guesses is 0 because those have not been populated yet. I'm simply going to click Continue. Since I know my number is 61, I can type that in and say OK, and I'm told I guessed it in one guess. So by using breakpoints, I can monitor the execution of my program and examine the different variables. I'm going to close that. To get rid of your breakpoint, you simply come down to breakpoint and say delete, or you can disable it. I'm going to delete it. And now my program would run as normal and not pause at that point.